Have you ever witnessed a moment so raw, so heartbreaking, that it changed the course of someone's life forever? What if I told you that one child, just 8 years old, walked into a job interview, desperate to help her sick mother, and in that single moment, she taught a powerful CEO a lesson he'd never forget. Mr. Maxwell Reed had been the CEO of Skytech Enterprises for over 15 years. He had seen everything in the corporate world. Highs, lows, people coming and going, the endless hustle for success. But that morning, he was about to face something that would shake him to his very core. The sunlight was streaming through his large office windows, giving a soft glow to the sleek modern furniture around him. The office buzzed with anticipation as the team had scheduled a series of interviews to find a new assistant. Maxwell's mind wandered as he prepared for the candidates, his thoughts distracted by a looming deal. The door opened, and in walked someone who, at first glance, couldn't possibly be here for an interview. A young girl no older than 8 or 9 stood there. Her hair was tangled in braids, her clothes were too big, and her eyes seemed wide with uncertainty. She held a small, worn-out notebook close to her chest, as if it was the only thing she could rely on. The contrast between her and the polished, professional office was staggering. Maxwell's jaw tightened in confusion. "Excuse me, little one. Are you lost?" The girl looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. She swallowed hard, then stepped forward and said in a small, almost trembling voice, "I'm here for the job interview, sir." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "Job interview? You're here for a job? How old are you?" "I'm 8, she answered, her voice barely audible, but there was no mistaking the determination in it. Maxwell was taken aback. "8? Sweetheart, you must be mistaken. This is a job for an adult. You're too young to be here." But the girl didn't back down. She looked him in the eyes, her gaze unwavering. "I'm here because my mom is in the hospital. Sir, she's very sick, and we need money for her treatment. She told me that I should come here for the interview to get the job so I can help her." Maxwell felt something stir inside him, an unfamiliar tug at his heart. This was no ordinary child. There was something in her eyes, a quiet desperation, that pierced through the walls of his well-guarded professional demeanor. "Your mom is in the hospital?" he repeated, his voice softer now. He motioned for her to take a seat, but the girl remained standing, clutching her notebook tighter. "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "Her name is Mary. She's been very sick, and the doctors say she needs surgery. But we don't have enough money. My mom told me, if I can get a job, I can help pay for her treatment." Maxwell's heart sank as he saw the tears well up in the girl's eyes. She was trying so hard to hold him back, but the weight of the situation was too much. He had no idea how to respond. In all his years of running a successful company, he had never been faced with situations so raw, so humbling. "Wait here for a moment," he said, his voice shaky. He stepped out of the office, his mind racing as he tried to think of what to do. How could this be happening? How could a child, so small, so fragile, be carrying such a heavy burden? He quickly called a hospital, his hands trembling as he spoke to the doctor who was treating the girl's mother. After a brief conversation, Maxwell was stunned by what he learned. Mary's condition was critical, and they were desperate for funds to cover the surgery. Maxwell returned to his office, the weight of the situation settling over him. He looked at the little girl still sitting nervously in the chair, her hands clasped in her lap. "Your mom's surgery, it's covered now," Maxwell said quietly. "I've arranged for the bills to be paid, and the surgery will happen." The girl's face lit up, her eyes brimming with disbelief. "Really? You mean she'll be okay?" Maxwell nodded. "She'll be okay." Maxwell Reed sat back in his sleek office chair, the soft hum of the air conditioning filling the quiet of his space. His mind was a maze of thoughts, conversations he'd had that morning, the upcoming board meeting, the endless stream of emails in his inbox. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. His mind kept drifting back to the girl, the one who had walked into his office that morning with nothing but an unwavering determination. The image of her face, a mixture of hope and fear, lingered in his thoughts, unshakable. He had promised to help her mother, but what did that really mean? What had he just done? He had made a promise to a child, one who had shown more courage in that moment than most adults would in a lifetime. And now, he felt an overwhelming weight on his shoulders, the need to follow through with the commitment he had made. He thought about how the girl had clutched her notebook to her chest, how her words had been laced with both innocence and desperation. I want to help my mom. It was a simple wish. And yet, it was one that most adults wouldn't even consider. To be willing to step into the adult world, to seek out a job interview at such a young age, just to help someone you loved. The sheer audacity of it had shaken him, and Maxwell couldn't help but feel ashamed of the world he had built around himself, where he had been so consumed by business, by success, that he had forgotten about the raw humanity that existed in small moments like this. Maxwell stood up from his chair, pacing back and forth as he thought about his next steps. His decision to cover the medical bills for the girl's mother, Mary, was just the beginning. What about the girl herself? What about the opportunity he could give her? Could he somehow offer her something more than just a financial solution? He stopped pacing and turned toward his office window, looking out at the sprawling city below him. The buildings stood tall, stretching to the sky as if to remind him of how far he had come. But at that moment, they felt hollow, empty. He had achieved so much, yet he was starting to wonder, what is it all for? He remembered something his father had once said to him when he was younger. Maxwell, his father had warned, life isn't about how much money you make or how many deals you close. It's about the people you impact, the lives you touch. You can make all the money in the world, but if you don't make a difference, then what's the point? Maxwell scoffed at his father's words back then, dismissing them as naive. But now, years later, he found himself haunted by those very words. Was he truly making a difference? Or was he just playing a part of a CEO, obsessed with power and prestige, while the real-world people like that little girl fought for survival? His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his reverie. It was a message from his assistant. Mr. Reed, there's a visitor for you. A young girl. She says she has a letter for you from her mother. Maxwell's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly who the visitor was. The little girl. His decision to help her had not been just about the financial assistance. It was about giving her hope, about showing her that the world could still be a place of kindness. But this letter, this was unexpected. He tapped his phone screen, quickly replying, "Send her in." A few moments later, the door to his office opened, and the girl stepped in, her small frame filling the doorway. She was wearing the same worn-out dress, though it seemed to carry a little more confidence now. Her shoulders were squared, her gaze slightly more focused. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed," she said, her voice still quiet, but with a firmness that hadn't been there before. She held a crumpled envelope in her small hands, carefully placing it on his desk. "This is for you from my mom." Maxwell nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "Thank you for bringing this," he said gently. "Come, sit down." She hesitated for a moment, before slowly taking the seat across from him. There was a noticeable difference in her demeanor. She was still a child, still wide-eyed and innocent, but there was something else now, something that spoke to the battle she had fought, even at such a young age. "Do you want to tell me what's in the letter?" Maxwell asked, his voice filled with curiosity and concern. The girl's face flushed, and she lowered her eyes. "My mom wanted to thank you. She said that she'll never be able to thank you enough for helping her. But she also asked me to tell you that we'll never forget what you've done for us. She says that you gave us a chance, and now she's going to get better." Maxwell felt a lump form in his throat. He had done something good, something right. But it wasn't about the thanks. It was about the lives he had touched, the difference he had made. For a moment, he was speechless, unsure of how to respond. The girl sat quietly, watching him, her hands folded in her lap. "Your mother is strong," Maxwell said finally, breaking the silence. "And so are you. You've both shown an incredible amount of courage, more than I've seen from many adults." The girl's eyes widened, and she looked at him with a mixture of surprise and wonder. "You really think so?" she asked, her voice filled with hope. Maxwell nodded, his expression softening. "I know so. And I want you to know, this isn't just about helping your mom with the bills. I want to help you too." Her face lit up, and for the first time, Maxwell saw the true joy in her eyes. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling with excitement. I want to give you an opportunity, he said, his voice firm but kind. You've shown me something today, something that most people don't have. You've shown me resilience, courage, and heart. I think you have a bright future ahead of you. If you want it, I can help you get a proper education. I can help you achieve things that you never thought possible. The girl stared at him, speechless for a moment, before her eyes filled with tears again. But these were not tears of sadness. These were tears of hope, of disbelief. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Thank you so much. Maxwell reached across the desk and placed a hand on hers, giving her a reassuring smile. You don't need to say anything. Just know that you and your mother are not alone. And when you're ready, we'll take the next steps together. The girl nodded eagerly, still unable to fully comprehend the gravity of what was happening. For her, this was nothing short of a miracle. Maxwell walked her out of his office, feeling a weight lifted from his own heart. As she left, he couldn't help but watch her walk away, her small steps filled with new purpose. This was more than just a job well done. This was a chance to change the course of a young girl's life. But as the door closed behind her, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just a beginning. That small ripple, the act of helping one person, had the power to create waves, far beyond what he ever imagined. Later that evening, Maxwell found himself thinking back to his own childhood. He thought about his parents, about his upbringing, and about the lessons he had learned along the way. He had always believed that success was something you earned, something that was given only to the most capable and driven individuals. But now, as he sat in his office, he realized that success wasn't just about individual achievement. It was about lifting others up, about using your position to make the world a little better, one small act of kindness at a time. And the little girl who had walked into his office that day had reminded him of that truth. Her resilience, her love for her mother, her bravery. Those were the qualities that truly defined success. And it was these qualities that Maxwell now knew he wanted to support, nurture, and encourage. The next day, he sent a team to visit her school to make sure she had the resources she needed. He arranged for her to meet with a mentor who could guide her, someone who could show her what it meant to have not just the knowledge, but the heart to succeed in this world. The days that followed Maxwell Reed's decision to help the little girl, whom he had come to know as Emily, were nothing short of transformative. His world, which had once revolved entirely around business meetings, deal-making, and corporate decisions, now fell out of place. There was something so raw, so undeniably real about Emily and her mother's story that Maxwell couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was being called to something bigger than himself. The weight of his role as a CEO, as a leader in his industry, seemed minuscule compared to the life and death struggles he had seen through Emily's eyes. It was as if the universe was giving him a reminder, a jarring call to action. Maxwell had always thought of himself as a man who could make things happen, but the truth was, he had never made anything happen quite like this. One crisp afternoon, Maxwell found himself driving toward the hospital where Emily's mother, Mary, had undergone surgery. His mind wandered through a myriad of thoughts. He hadn't spoken to Emily in a couple of days. He wanted to give her some space to adjust to the changes, to let her process the fact that her mother would soon be coming home. Yet, something told him that today would be important. Something deep inside him urged him to visit, to see how they were truly doing. As he approached the hospital, the towering building loomed ahead of him, sterile and cold in its clinical grayness. But as he parked his car and walked into the hospital lobby, Maxwell felt his heart begin to race. This wasn't a meeting with a high-powered client or a press conference. This was real life, a place where every person who walked through his doors had their own struggles, their own battles to fight. He approached the nurse's desk and asked for directions to Mary's room. As he made his way through the long, narrow hallways, he passed countless rooms, some filled with sick children, others with elderly patients, and still others with the quiet hum machines keeping people alive. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life, a reminder that despite the power and success Maxwell had built, nothing was guaranteed. Finally, he arrived at Mary's room. The door was cracked open, and inside, he saw her lie in bed, a pail for drip attached to her arm. Her once vibrant face now looked weary, but there was a softness to it, an undeniable strength that Maxwell had come to admire. Beside her, Emily sat in a chair, reading a book aloud to her mother. Her small voice filled the room with an almost surreal sense of calm, like an oasis of peace in a sea of turmoil. Maxwell hesitated for a moment, standing in the doorway, unsure of how to approach. But when Emily looked up and saw him standing there, she immediately broke into a smile, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Mr. Reed," she exclaimed, jumping up from her seat. "You came." Maxwell smiled, his heart swelling with warmth. "Of course I came, Emily. How could I not?" He walked over to Mary's bedside, gently shaking her hand. "How are you feeling, Mary?" Mary gave him a weak smile. "Better. Thanks to you," she said, her voice hoarse but full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you enough for what you've done for us." Maxwell shook his head. "There's no need for thanks. I did what anyone would do." But Mary's expression shifted and her eyes filled with tears. "No, Maxwell, not anyone would do what you did. You've given us a chance. You've changed our lives." Maxwell's throat tightened at her words. It was one thing to help someone, but it was another thing entirely to realize the impact you had on their life. To truly understand that you had, in some small way, made a difference. He glanced at Emily, who had returned to her seat, her face full of hope. She was still the same girl he had met, but now she seemed different, more confident, more assured. Maxwell could see the change in her eyes. The weight of her responsibility had lessened, replaced by a sense of possibility, of hope. "I just want you to know that I'm here for both of you," Maxwell said softly, his gaze flickering between Emily and her mother. "Whatever you need, I'll be here." Mary nodded, her eyes welling up with emotion. "You've already done so much. I don't know how to repay you." Maxwell sat down in the chair beside her bed, looking at the two of them. "You don't have to repay me," he said quietly, "but there is something I want to offer you both. Emily, I want to help you get the education you deserve. I want to make sure that you have the resources, the opportunities, to do whatever you want with your life." Emily's eyes widened, her mouth slightly agape. You mean it?" she whispered. Maxwell smiled gently. "I do. You've shown more strength and courage than most adults I know. I believe in you, Emily." Mary looked at him, surprised. "You would really do that for her? For us?" Maxwell nodded. "Of course. I know that education is the key to everything. I've seen it change lives, and I want to change yours." Tears streamed down Mary's face as she looked at her daughter. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "I never imagined that anyone could be so kind to us." Maxwell leaned forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "There's nothing that compares to what you've done for each other, Mary. The way you fought to stay strong for Emily, and the way Emily has fought for you, there's nothing more powerful than that." The room fell into a comfortable silence as the three of them sat together, the weight of the moment settling around them. Maxwell couldn't help but reflect on how much he had learned in such a short time. He had come to the hospital thinking he was going to check in on Mary and Emily to make sure they were doing okay. But what he had realized was that this small family had changed him. They had taught him the true meaning of strength, love, and sacrifice. After a few minutes, Maxwell stood up, his decision made. "I'll let you both rest now, but I want to make sure that Emily gets everything she needs. We'll start with a scholarship fund for her. I'll also make sure she has the best tutors, mentors, everything she needs to succeed." Emily's eyes were wide with astonishment. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. Thank you so much. I promise I won't let you down." Maxwell smiled, his heart full. "I know you won't, Emily." As he walked toward the door, he paused and turned back to them. "You both are stronger than you realize, and I'm honored to be a part of your journey." Maxwell sat in his office that night, the weight of the day's events still heavy on his heart. He stared out at the city below, watching as the lights flickered in the distance. His phone buzzed on the desk, but he didn't reach for it. Instead, he let his thoughts wander, reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few days. He thought about the many decisions he had made over the years, the countless business deals that had come and gone. But none of those decisions had left him feeling quite like this. There was something undeniably fulfilling about the way he had been able to impact Emily's life, about the way he had been able to give her hope, and in turn, feel hope himself. It had always been about the deals for Maxwell, the pursuit of success. But now, success had taken on a new meaning. It wasn't about the bottom line. It wasn't about closing the next big contract. Success was about how much of a difference you could make in someone else's life. Maxwell knew that this moment, the moment he decided to change Emily's future, was a turning point. It was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one where his wealth and influence were no longer the center of his world. From this point forward, he was going to make a conscious effort to use his position, his resources, to do something that truly mattered. He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant. "Cancel all my meetings for tomorrow. I'll be in touch with the hospital and Emily's school. We're starting this project immediately." He hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, a sense of peace washing over him. He wasn't sure where this new path would lead, but he knew one thing for sure: it was the right one. The journey had just begun. Maxwell Reed hadn't been able to shake the images from the hospital visit. Emily's small, determined face, her mother's vulnerability, and the overwhelming gratitude they both had shown him. It all played over and over in his mind. The reality of the situation had settled into Maxwell's bones like an indelible truth, something he couldn't easily walk away from. This wasn't just about offering help anymore. It was about becoming part of their journey, their story. He had made a decision to support Emily's education, but he felt compelled to do more, to be more involved in their lives. The following days felt different for Maxwell. His work at Skytech, while still demanding, seemed distant now, far less important than it had been before. He found himself canceling meetings, shifting priorities, and reorienting his focus towards Emily and her family. Every day, Maxwell made calls first to Emily's school, then to a team of tutors he had personally vetted. He knew it would be a long, challenging road for Emily, but he was determined to give her every opportunity to thrive. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when Maxwell found himself standing in front of his office window, looking out at the busy streets below. A sudden urge to do something more, something real, pushed him into action. Maxwell picked up his phone and dialed the number he had memorized by now. "Emily, it's Mr. Reed," he said when she answered the phone. Her voice was light and full of the same hopefulness that had captured his heart from beginning. "Mr. Reed, how are you? My mom is doing better. Thank you so much for everything." Emily's voice was filled with gratitude, and Maxwell could hear her mother in the background, humming softly. "I'm glad to hear she's recovering," Maxwell replied, his voice warm. "I want to let you know that I've arranged for a scholarship for you. You'll have full access to a team of tutors to help you catch up with your studies. I know you missed school for a while, but I believe you can catch up quickly. I've also set up a mentorship program for you. There's a lady named Mrs. Johnson who will guide you and help you navigate everything moving forward. She's someone I trust completely, and she's excited to work with you." Emily's excitement was evident through the phone as she gasped in disbelief. "Wait, are you serious, Mr. Reed? You've done all this for me? I don't know what to say. I've never had someone do something like this for me." Maxwell smiled, feeling a weight in his chest ease. "You don't have to say anything, Emily. Just know that I believe in you. You've got a bright future ahead of you." But then, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "Mr. Reed, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about my mom, and about everything you've done for us. I really want to make you proud. I want to help my mom even more," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. "But there's something else I need to tell you." Maxwell listened intently, sensing the seriousness in her voice. "What is it, Emily?" I've been keeping something from you," Emily began, her words faltering slightly. "I didn't want to worry you, but my mom's situation is more complicated than I told you." Maxwell's brow furrowed, the concern in his voice rising. "What do you mean? Is she okay?" Emily paused before answering, as though choosing her words carefully. "The surgery she had helped, but there are still some things we haven't told you. My mom's condition is still fragile, and she's been dealing with complications. The doctors said they need to keep a close eye on her for a while. We're not out of the woods yet." Maxwell's heart sank as he processed her words. His instinct was to jump into action, to do something, anything that could help. Emily, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want to burden you. She responded quickly, though Maxwell could hear the hesitation in her voice. You've already done so much for us. I didn't want to ask for more. Maxwell took a deep breath, leaning against his desk as he collected his thoughts. You're not a burden, Emily. And I want you to know that I'm here for you, for your mom, whatever you need. I can't promise that everything will be easy, but I'll be there to help. I'll do whatever it takes. There was silence on the other end of the line. Before Emily spoke again, her voice small and unsure. Thank you, Mr. Reed. I don't know what we would do without you. Maxwell's heart swelled with emotion. Don't thank me yet. We've only just begun. I want to make sure your mom gets the care she needs. I'll personally make sure the hospital is aware of her condition, and I'll do everything I can to make sure you and your mom are supported. That night, Maxwell couldn't sleep. Thoughts of Mary's condition and Emily's unspoken burden weighed heavily on him. He hadn't realized the full extent of their struggles, their fight to stay afloat, to remain strong in the face of such adversity. And as he lay awake in the dark, he realized that this wasn't just a financial transaction for him anymore. This was a promise he had made to Emily, to her mother, to himself. He had to make good on that promise. He had to follow through. The next day, Maxwell met with his team at Skytech, and for the first time in a long while, he felt disconnected from the boardroom, the projections, the endless meetings. As he discussed potential business ventures with his colleagues, his mind kept drifting back to Emily and her family. The decisions he was making today felt meaningless compared to the bigger picture, the world beyond the skyscrapers and the suits. The following week, Maxwell took it upon himself to visit the hospital again. This time, he was determined to meet with Mary's doctors and understand exactly what was happening with her health. He couldn't afford to sit back and let the situation unfold without truly understanding it. Emily had trusted him with their lives, and he had a responsibility to live up to that trust. As he entered the hospital, he found himself walking the same sterile hallways, the same quiet rooms filled with the sound of beeping machines and hushed conversations. He arrived at Mary's room, where she was lying quietly, her breathing slow but steady. Emily was sitting beside her, holding her hand, reading a book. Maxwell knocked gently on the doorframe. Emily looked up first, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Mr. Reed," she exclaimed, standing up quickly. Maxwell smiled and walked over to Mary's bed, where he stood for a moment, taking in her frail condition. "How are you feeling today, Mary?" he asked softly. Mary smiled faintly, her voice hoarse. "I'm doing okay, Mr. Reed. I'm just trying to get my strength back." Maxwell pulled up a chair next to her, sitting down carefully. "I wanted to check in with the doctors. I know things have been complicated, and I want to make sure that you're getting the best possible care." Mary's expression softened, and she reached out to place her hand on his. "You've already done so much for us. I don't know how to thank you." Maxwell shook his head, his voice sincere. "I didn't do this for thanks, Mary. I did it because it's the right thing to do, and I'll continue to do whatever it takes to help you and your daughter." Emily, who had been quietly sitting by her mother's side, now spoke up. "Mr. Reed, I was thinking, what if my mom didn't just get the treatment she needs here? What if we could get the best doctors, the best care anywhere in the world? What if there was a way to give her a chance to get completely better?" Maxwell turned toward her, his brow furrowed in concern. "What do you mean, Emily? What are you asking for?" Emily's eyes were wide with determination. "I know this sounds crazy, but I don't want to lose my mom. She's all I have. So, what if there's a way to get her the best care? Not just here, but in a place where they can do everything they can to help her get well? I want to make sure she doesn't have to suffer anymore." Maxwell stared at her for a moment, his heart torn. Emily's desire to help her mother was as pure as any love he had ever witnessed. He could see that she was struggling with guilt, with fear, feelings no child should ever have to endure. "Emily," Maxwell said gently, his voice steady, "I'm going to help you. I will make sure your mom gets the best care possible. We'll get the best doctors, no matter where they are. I promise." Maxwell Reed had always been the kind of man who prided himself on making the right decision. He'd built a career on making choices that brought success, wealth, and prestige. He knew how to close a deal, how to negotiate, how to win. But in the weeks following his visit to the hospital, he realized that the decisions he had made for his career were insignificant compared to the decisions he now had to make regarding Emily and her mother, Mary. He was no longer just the CEO of Skytech Enterprises. He was becoming something he hadn't expected. The more he interacted with Emily and Mary, the more he found his worldview shifting. His world had once been defined by power and financial success, but now it seemed to him that real power came from kindness, from helping others, from standing up for those who needed it most. As Maxwell sat in his office, looking over paperwork and responding to emails, his thoughts kept drifting back to Emily. He had promised her and Mary that he would do whatever it took to help them, but he wasn't sure if that was enough. He had made arrangements for her education, secured scholarships, and provided financial support for Mary's medical treatment. But deep down, he knew there was more he could do. The weight of his promise to Emily hung heavily on his heart. He couldn't just stand by and be a distant benefactor. He needed to be there for them, to be involved in their lives in a way that was tangible, not just through financial support. It was a rainy Thursday when Maxwell received a call that would change everything. "Mr. Reed?" The voice on the other end was urgent, filled with worry. "This is Nurse Clara from the hospital. I'm afraid there's been a complication with Mary's recovery. She's experiencing some serious complications, and the doctors are doing everything they can, but it's not looking good." Maxwell's heart sank. He sat up straight, the weight of the words sinking into his bones. "What do you mean it's not looking good? What's happening to her?" "We don't know yet, Mr. Reed," Nurse Clara continued. "We're trying to stabilize her, but her condition has worsened over the past 24 hours. I recommend you come to the hospital immediately." Maxwell didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, told his assistant he was leaving, and rushed out the door. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts concern for Mary, fear for Emily, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. He couldn't bear the thought of losing them. He had promised to help, to be there for them. But now, all of a sudden, he felt powerless. The hospital, always a cold and sterile environment, now seemed even more so as Maxwell hurried down the long hallways, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He arrived at Mary's room to find a flurry of medical staff surrounding her, but it was clear that they were struggling to stabilize her. Emily was sitting by her mother's side, her small face etched with worry, her hands gripping her mother's, as she whispered soothing words. Maxwell approached cautiously, his heart aching at the sight of Emily's tear-streaked face. He could barely recognize the young girl who had once been so full of hope and determination. In her place was a child who seemed to have aged far beyond her years. "Emily," Maxwell said softly, his voice trembling. "How is she?" Emily looked up, her eyes red from crying. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to compose herself. "Mr. Reed, I don't know. They said they're doing everything they can, but..." She trailed off, her voice breaking. "I don't know what to do anymore. My mom, she's always been there for me. I don't know what I'll do if something happens to her." Maxwell felt a wave of emotion wash over him as he looked at Emily. He could see the weight she was carrying, the burden of fear and responsibility that no child should ever have to face. He knelt down beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Emily," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here. I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." For a moment, Emily didn't say anything. She simply stared at her mother, her face a mix of pain, uncertainty, and exhaustion. Then, as if suddenly realizing that Maxwell's words were meant to comfort her, she leaned into him, burying her face in his chest. Maxwell wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly, as her small sobs shook through him. "I can't lose her," Emily whispered, her voice full of terror. "I can't do it without her. I don't know what to do. I've already lost so much. I can't lose her too." Maxwell's heart shattered at her words. He had promised to help, to be there for them, but he hadn't realized how deep the bond between mother and daughter truly went. It was a kind of love that transcended everything, the kind of love that could change the world. And now, it was slipping away from them, one breath at a time. As the hours passed, the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize Mary. But the prognosis remained uncertain. Maxwell stayed at the hospital with Emily, refusing to leave her side. He made calls, arranged for the best specialists, and worked with the doctors to ensure that every possible avenue was being pursued. But deep down, Maxwell knew there were limits. No matter how much money he threw at the situation, there were some things that couldn't be fixed. Some things that were simply out of his control. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sterile hospital room, Maxwell found himself standing alone at the window, looking out over the city. He couldn't focus on the skyline, though. His mind was consumed by one thought. How could he help Emily through this? How could he make sure she didn't lose everything? He knew what needed to be done. He couldn't sit by any longer, watching them suffer. He needed to act, to make a decision that would change everything for Emily and her mother. But this time, it wasn't just about money. It wasn't about business deals or contracts. This time, it was about something deeper, something more human. Maxwell turned away from the window and walked back to Mary's bedside. He sat down next to Emily, who was still clutching her mother's hand. Her face was pale, and her eyes were empty, as if she had given up all hope. "Emily," Maxwell said gently, breaking the silence. "I need you to listen to me, okay?" Emily looked up, her eyes tired and distant. "What is it, Mr. Reed?" Her voice was flat, as if she had nothing left to give. "I'm going to do something that I've never done before," Maxwell began, his voice steady. "I'm going to make sure your mother gets the best care possible. I'm going to take her to a place where they can help her, where they have the best doctors, the best facilities. I'm going to make sure that she gets a second chance." Emily blinked, her eyes narrowing in confusion. "What do you mean? We're already at the hospital." Maxwell shook his head. "This hospital is great, but it's not enough. I've been in contact with specialists overseas, some of the best doctors in the world. They can offer treatments that aren't available here. We're going to get her the best care, Emily, and I'm going to make sure she gets well. I won't stop until she does." Emily looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to process what he was saying. Then, she slowly nodded, her eyes brimming with tears once again. "You really think you can help her? You really think she can get better?" Maxwell nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I do, Emily. I'm going to make it happen. I won't let her go without fighting for her." The tears that had been threatening to fall for hours finally streamed down Emily's face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything. You don't know what this means to me." Maxwell reached over and gently wiped away her tears, his heart heavy with the weight of the promise he had just made. "We'll get through this. Emily, you're not alone anymore. You and your mom, your family now. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you're okay." As he sat there, holding her hand, Maxwell made a silent vow to himself. This wasn't just about fixing one life. It was about changing the course of their future. He had already done so much for them, but now he was going to give them everything. He was going to give them hope, give them the life they deserved, and make sure that Mary's fight wasn't in vain. The days that followed were a blur for Maxwell Reed. Despite his busy schedule, he could not stop thinking about Emily and Mary. Their struggles had dug a deep hole in his soul. He had made promises to them, promises that he was now determined to keep. He had already arranged for Mary to be transported overseas for specialized treatment, and while the arrangements were being made, his focus was entirely on ensuring that both of them were cared for emotionally, physically, and financially. Maxwell, who had spent most of his life seeing the world through the lens of business, was now seeing it through the eyes of someone who wanted to make a true difference. The impact that helping Emily and her mother had on him was profound, yet also left him wondering if he had been truly living before. He had been so focused on his empire, so obsessed with the rush of closing deals and signing contracts, that he had ignored the world outside his office walls. Now, he was face to face with a challenge that not only required his wealth, but demanded his heart. The promise he had made to Emily that he would help her mother was the most important thing in his life right now, and he would stop at nothing to ensure Mary's recovery. Maxwell had spent the night in the hospital once Mary had been transferred to a specialized unit. Emily had begged him to stay with her, and he couldn't deny her. He had never been one for the quiet, intimate moments, but this time it felt different. He had promised to help them, and this promise was not going to be another empty gesture. When the morning arrived, Maxwell found himself sitting in a chair next to Emily, who was watching her mother intently. Mary, though pale and weak, was breathing steadily, her chest rising and falling with a rhythm that brought a slight sense of comfort to the otherwise sterile hospital room. Maxwell hadn't yet told Emily everything that he had planned for their future, how he would help her attend the best school, secure the resources she needed for her education, but now was not the time. Emily looked up at him, her face both young and old at once, her innocent optimism mixed with the somber realities of what they had been through. "Mr. Reed?" Emily whispered, breaking the silence. Maxwell turned to look at her. "Yes, Emily?" She looked uncertain, fidgeting with her fingers. "I was wondering, when do you think Mom will be okay again? Will she ever be the way she used to be?" Maxwell's heart clenched. He knew that her question wasn't just about Mary's physical health. It was about hope. It was about the possibility of a future that wasn't marred by the uncertainty of illness, a future where Emily could rely on her mother's strength, where Mary could guide her through life's challenges. Maxwell took a deep breath, then leaned forward and placed his hand gently on Emily's. "We don't know exactly when she'll be fully better, but what I do know is that we'll get there together. Your mom is strong, and she's fighting to be there for you." Emily nodded, tears threatening to spill from her eyes again. "I don't want to lose her, Mr. Reed. I've already lost so much. I don't know what I would do without her." Maxwell squeezed her hand. "I promise you, Emily, I won't let that happen. I'll be here every step of the way." Just then, the door opened and the doctor entered, his expression serious but hopeful. He gave Maxwell and Emily a reassuring smile before speaking. "Mary is stable for now," the doctor said, "but she's not out of the woods just yet. The next 24 hours are critical. We've got her on the best treatment possible, but I want to caution you both. There's still a long road ahead." Maxwell felt the weight of the doctor's words pressed down on him. He had been expecting this. He knew that it would take time for Mary to fully recover, but hearing it aloud, from someone who had seen the medical complexities of her case, made the situation even more real. Emily's face fell, her small shoulders slumping as she absorbed the news. "Will she be okay?" she asked, her voice breaking with fear. "We're doing everything we can," the doctor said, giving her a soft but confident smile. "We just need to take it day by day." Maxwell turned to Emily, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this, and we'll do it together." After the doctor left, Maxwell spent the evening by Emily's side, quietly observing as she sat next to her mother, talking to her as if Mary could hear every word. Emily shared memories, told stories about her school days, and even tried to joke with her mom, anything to make the situation feel just a little more normal. Maxwell couldn't help but watch her, a deep sense of admiration building within him. This young girl, who had already experienced so much loss in her life, was holding on to hope with all her might. Maxwell's role in her life was now far beyond that of benefactor. He was a mentor, a friend, a protector. As the night stretched on, Maxwell found himself standing at the window again, staring out at the city that had always felt so much like his own, yet now it felt distant, almost irrelevant. He was no longer in control of every outcome, and for the first time, he felt a sense of helplessness that he couldn't shake. His wealth and status had never given him any real power over life and death, and he was coming to terms with that reality. "Mr. Reed?" Emily's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. "Yes, Emily? Thank you for everything. For being here with me. For helping my mom. You're the only person who's really been there for us," she said, her voice so sincere, so full of trust that it made Maxwell's heart ache. He turned to her, his face softening. "You're welcome, Emily, but you should know I'm the lucky one. I didn't expect to find someone like you, someone so strong, so brave. You've taught me more about courage than I ever could have learned in business." She smiled at him, her eyes sparkling for the first time in what felt like days. "You're a good person, Mr. Reed. I'm glad you're here." Maxwell nodded, feeling the weight of his own words. "I'll always be here, Emily, for you, for your mom, for both of you. As the days passed, Maxwell's involvement in Emily and Mary's lives deepened. His schedule at Skytech became increasingly secondary as he spent more time at the hospital, making phone calls, arranging for the best doctors, and continuing his efforts to provide Emily with the resources she needed for her education. He began to take real action, meeting with the finest tutors and mentors, ensuring that Emily would not just recover from her loss, but thrive. But even as Maxwell gave everything he had to their cause, he knew he was facing a major personal decision. The more time he spent with Emily and Mary, the more he realized that his own life, his own direction, had changed. Maxwell had always been driven by the need to win, to conquer the next challenge, the next deal. But now, standing in the sterile confines of a hospital room, surrounded by people whose lives were truly on the line, he felt the hollow nature of his previous pursuits. What would life look like if he chose to step away from the relentless drive for success in the corporate world? Could he find fulfillment in something that was so much more than the spreadsheet calculations and profit margins that had once defined him? Later that evening, as Maxwell walked out of the hospital, he found himself standing in the middle of the parking lot, looking up at the darkening sky. The stars were beginning to twinkle above him, but it was the city lights that caught his attention. His gaze softened as he thought about the decision he had to make. He knew what his heart was telling him, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to make that leap. The door to his car opened, and as he slid into the driver's seat, Maxwell took one last look at the hospital before starting the engine. As he drove home, his mind continued to race with thoughts of Emily and Mary, of the promises he had made, and the future he was building for them. He knew he had made a difference in their lives. But now, he wondered if his life was about to take a different turn as well. Maxwell Reed sat in his office late that evening, the soft glow of the desk lamp illuminating the stacks of paperwork that lay before him. His mind, however, was 1,000 miles away from the numbers, contracts, and business ventures that usually consumed his thoughts. His attention was divided between the world of business, which had once been his primary focus, and the world he was building with Emily and her mother, Mary. For the past several weeks, he had spent most of his time away from Skytech Enterprises. His commitments to the company had shifted, and his decision to help Emily and Mary had only strengthened his resolve to be more present in their lives. But tonight, as he looked over the latest reports, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled in two directions. The weight of his responsibilities at Skytech still loomed large, but the connection he had formed with Emily and Mary was far more profound than any business deal. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in thought. He had done everything he could to ensure Mary received the best possible care, and Emily had started attending the new school he had arranged for her. Tutors were in place, mentors were lined up, and Emily's future was beginning to look brighter with each passing day. Yet, despite all this progress, Maxwell felt an unfamiliar unease stirring inside him. He had promised to be there for them, to guide them through this difficult time. But what did it mean to truly be there for someone? Was it enough to provide financial support and medical care? Or was there something more, a deeper, more personal connection that he needed to offer? He had already sacrificed his time, his energy, and his attention to ensure their well-being. But what if he could do more? What if there was a role he needed to play in their lives that went beyond the professional or financial? Maxwell's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock on his door. He glanced up, momentarily surprised to see Emily standing in the doorway. She had always been so strong, so independent, but tonight there was something different about her. The usual lightness in her step was replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. "Mr. Reed?" Emily's voice was soft, but there was a sense of determination in her tone. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Maxwell smiled warmly, motioning for her to come in. "Of course, Emily. What's on your mind?" She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings of his office, but she seemed more focused on the conversation they were about to have. "I've been thinking," she began slowly, "about everything you've done for us, everything you've given me and my mom. And I need to say thank you. I can't imagine what would have happened if you hadn't helped us." Maxwell's heart tightened at her words. He stood up from his desk and walked over to where she was standing. "You don't need to thank me, Emily. I'm just doing what I promised. Emily shook her head, her eyes welling up with unshed tears. No, you don't understand. It's not just about the money or the school or the doctors. It's about you being there for us. It's about you showing me that someone cares, that there's still good in the world. I don't know how I could ever repay you for that. Maxwell gently placed his hand on her shoulder, his voice filled with sincerity. You don't need to repay me, Emily. The only thing I want is for you to live the life you deserve. You've already given me more than I could have ever asked for your trust, your hope, your courage. That's all I need. Emily smiled, a flicker of hope returning to her eyes. You've already given me more than I could ever ask for, too. I want to do something for you, Mr. Reed. I want to help you, just like you've helped me. Maxwell looked at her, surprised by her words. Help me? Emily, you've already done more for me than I could ever explain. You've shown me what it means to truly care for someone, to love them unconditionally. I've learned so much from you already. She took a deep breath, her expression turning serious. I know this sounds strange, but I've been thinking about what I want to do with my life. You've helped me get the education I need, but I want to do something more. I want to help other kids like me. Kids who don't have the same opportunities, who don't have someone to help them. I want to make a difference. Maxwell's heart swelled with pride. He had always known that Emily was special, but hearing her speak so passionately about helping others, about using her own experiences to make the world better, filled him with a sense of awe. That's an incredible goal. Emily, Maxwell said softly, you're going to make a difference. I can feel it. And I'll be here to support you every step of the way. Emily nodded, her determination unwavering. I want to start by helping kids at my school. I want to show them that even if things seem impossible, they can still dream big. Just like you showed me. Maxwell smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He had spent so much of his life focused on success and achievement, but now he was beginning to understand that real success wasn't about how much you had. It was about how much you gave, how much you could help others achieve. After their conversation, Emily returned to her school, and Maxwell returned to his office, his mind racing with the implications of what she had said. He couldn't help but admire her resolve, her desire to make a difference despite everything she had been through. It was a quality that he had never truly understood before, but now he found himself inspired by it. Maxwell knew that Emily was right. He had been given the gift of opportunity, of wealth, influence, and power, but what had he done with those gifts? Had he truly used them to make the world a better place, or had he simply accumulated them for his own gain? Emily's words echoed in his mind, and he realized that he had the power to do something more with his life. He didn't need to be just a businessman. He could be a mentor, a guide, someone who helped others unlock their potential. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of his face as he thought about the future. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. He had to make a change, a real change. He couldn't continue living in the bubble of corporate success and material wealth. He needed to be part of something bigger than himself. The decision was made. The next day, Maxwell met with his board of directors at Skytech. It was a pivotal moment. The company was thriving, and he was at the top of his game. But as he sat at the head of the table, surrounded by people who had been with him since the beginning, Maxwell knew that this would be one of the most difficult decisions of his life. Everyone, Maxwell began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, I've made a decision. I've decided to take a step back from my role as CEO of Skytech. I'm going to focus on other areas of my life, areas where I can make a real difference. I've learned that success isn't just about profit margins or stock prices. It's about the people you help, the lives you touch. And that's where I want to focus my energy now. A murmur rippled through the room as his colleagues exchanged surprised glances. Maxwell wasn't one to make rash decisions, and this announcement was unprecedented. I know this may come as a shock, Maxwell continued, but I believe this is the right path for me. I'm going to spend more time working on charitable initiatives, helping kids like Emily, and supporting causes that I believe in. Skytech will continue to run smoothly under new leadership, and I will still be involved in the company. But my focus will be elsewhere. The room fell silent for a moment, and then one of his colleagues spoke up. Maxwell, this is unexpected, but we support you. If this is what you need to do, then we're behind you. Maxwell smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt free to pursue something that was more meaningful than the corporate grind. Maxwell spent the next few months working closely with Emily, helping her set up a foundation to support underprivileged children in her community. The foundation focused on education, mentorship, and providing resources for children who lacked access to the opportunities Emily had been given. The foundation was named after her mother, Mary, who had fought so hard to survive and give her daughter a better life. As Maxwell worked alongside Emily, he saw firsthand how much of an impact they could make. It wasn't just about providing money. It was about creating lasting change, about showing kids that they had a future they could build with their own hands. Emily's passion was infectious, and Maxwell found himself inspired by her every day. For the first time in his life, Maxwell felt like he was truly making a difference. He wasn't just a businessman. He was someone who was using his resources and his influence to create real change in the world. And as Emily's foundation began to grow, Maxwell realized that this was a life he was meant to live. He had spent so many years chasing success, but now he understood what it truly meant to succeed. It wasn't about the deals you closed or the money you made. It was about the lives you touched, the people you helped, and the love you gave. Maxwell had found a new purpose, a purpose that was far greater than anything he had ever achieved in business. And as he looked at Emily, her bright eyes filled with hope and determination, he knew that together they could change the world. Maxwell Reed had made the decision to step back from the corporate world, and with each passing day, he found himself immersed more deeply in his work with Emily and her foundation. It wasn't just about writing checks or attending meetings. It was about shaping a future for children who had no voice, no opportunities, and no one to fight for them. The feeling of purpose that he found in his work with Emily made every decision he had made worth it. But with this newfound sense of purpose came new challenges that neither he nor Emily were prepared for. The Mary Reed Foundation had been in full swing for months now. They had provided school supplies, organized mentorship programs, and connected countless children with resources they had never dreamed of. Emily had taken on the role of the foundation's youngest board member with grace and passion, but Maxwell knew she still carried the weight of her mother's illness, as well as the growing responsibilities of leading the foundation. Despite their best efforts, the road wasn't always smooth. The more the foundation grew, the more external forces began to challenge them. There were critics, some who questioned whether someone as young as Emily could truly lead such an initiative, others who doubted Maxwell's sincerity. There were logistical hurdles, financial concerns, and even the occasional legal battle as they navigated the murky waters of nonprofit work. One particularly difficult afternoon, Maxwell sat in his office, reviewing a series of complaints filed against the foundation. The accusations were unfounded, rooted in jealousy and misinformation, but they stung nonetheless. He glanced up in the paperwork as Emily walked into his office, her face clouded with concern. "Mr. Reed, I need to talk to you," Emily said quietly, her voice tinged with worry. "I've been getting calls from people saying that they don't think the foundation is doing enough, that we're not really helping the kids. I don't know what to do. We've been working so hard, but it feels like it's never enough." Maxwell leaned back in his chair, his expression calm, despite the whirlwind of emotions he felt inside. Emily's worry mirrored his own. He had anticipated resistance, but the sheer magnitude of the opposition was unexpected. The naysayers, the doubters, were growing louder with each success the foundation achieved. They were afraid of change, afraid of what Emily's leadership might mean for the future. They didn't understand that the foundation wasn't just about giving handouts. It was about empowering children, giving them the tools to succeed on their own terms. "Emily," Maxwell began, his voice steady, "people are always going to doubt you. They're always going to question your ability. But remember this, what we're doing is changing lives. It's real. And no matter how much resistance we face, we have to keep going." Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she bit her lip to keep her composure. "But what if we're not doing enough? What if we're failing?" Maxwell stood up and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are doing more than enough. You're doing the impossible. And when you face obstacles, you just keep moving forward. Because that's what makes the difference. Not how many people are on your side, but how much you believe in what you're doing." Emily nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I believe in it. I believe in all of it. I just wish everyone else could see what we're doing. That it's not just about money or resources. It's about changing hearts." Maxwell smiled. "And we're doing just that." Though Maxwell and Emily had persevered through the early stages of the foundation's development, a new challenge emerged, one that would test their resolve more than ever before. As the foundation expanded its reach, so did its expenses. Providing scholarships, mentorship programs, school supplies, and specialized tutoring was costly, and while they had been able to secure funding through donations, grants, and Maxwell's personal contributions, it was no longer enough to keep up with the growing demand. One evening, as Maxwell reviewed the financials, he noticed a sharp decline in their cash flow. The foundation was hemorrhaging money, and unless they secured additional funding, they would soon face the reality of cutting programs, or worse, shutting down altogether. Maxwell sighed deeply as he looked over the reports, his thoughts racing. The foundation had already made a significant impact, but the financial sustainability of their work was always a precarious balancing act. He knew the importance of continuing their work, but he also understood that the reality of running a nonprofit meant making difficult decisions. That night, he called a board meeting with Emily and the foundation's advisors. As the team gathered around the table, Maxwell's mind was clouded with concerns. Emily, though outwardly confident, had been struggling with the pressures of leadership. The weight of the foundation's future rested heavily on both of their shoulders, and it was becoming clear that something would need to change if they were to continue. Emily sat across from Maxwell, her usual enthusiasm replaced by a nervous energy. "Mr. Reed," she began, her voice hesitant, "I know things have been tough lately. I keep trying to think of ways to bring in more donations or funding, but it doesn't seem to be enough. What if we fail? What if we can't make this work?" Maxwell's eyes softened as he looked at her. "We're not going to fail, Emily. We'll find a way. I promise you that." But despite his words, Maxwell's heart ached. He had made so many promises, but the reality of running a foundation was far more complex than he had anticipated. Raising awareness, securing funding, and navigating the bureaucracy of nonprofit work had drained him in ways that he hadn't expected. He was beginning to feel the burden of leadership, something he had never fully understood until now. In the midst of their struggles, Maxwell and Emily decided to take a step back from the business side of things and focus on the heart of the foundation, the children. They spent a day visiting several of the schools and communities the foundation had been supporting, meeting with teachers, parents, and, most importantly, the children who had benefited from their programs. Maxwell and Emily arrived at a local community center where a group of children gathered. They were excited to see them, but there was a palpable sense of skepticism in the air. Maxwell could see that some of the children were unsure, even cynical, about the promises that had been made to them. And who could blame them? They had been let down so many times before by a system that had failed them, by a society that had ignored their needs. As they spoke with the children, Maxwell realized that the foundation was about so much more than just resources. It was about restoring hope, showing them that there was something beyond the poverty and hopelessness they had grown up with. It was about inspiring them to dream bigger, to believe in themselves, to see a future filled with possibilities. Maxwell sat down with a group of older boys who had been through the mentoring program. They were no longer the same children who had walked through the doors of the foundation months ago. They were more confident, more ambitious. They talked about their dreams of becoming doctors, engineers, and teachers. And for the first time in a long while, Maxwell felt a surge of hope. "We didn't think we could make it," one boy said, his eyes full of determination. "But you showed us that we can do something with our lives." Emily, who had been listening quietly, smiled and placed a hand on Maxwell's arm. "This is why we're doing this. This is what makes it all worth it." Maxwell nodded, his heart swelling with pride. The financial challenges, the critics, the doubts, all of it faded in that moment. He had come to realize that the true impact of the foundation wasn't measured by money or success. It was measured by the children they had helped, the lives they had touched, and the future they had inspired. After the visit to the community center, Maxwell and Emily returned to the office, their minds clearer, their hearts full. They knew they still had a long way to go, but they also knew that the challenges ahead were surmountable if they stuck together. The next few weeks would be critical. He needed to secure additional funding for the foundation, streamline their operations, and find sustainable ways to support their growing initiatives. Maxwell sat down with Emily late one evening to discuss their next steps. Emily, he said, his voice steady, I know things have been tough lately, but we've seen the difference we're making. We can't stop now. Emily nodded, her determination renewed. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we're not just providing resources, but hope. I want to keep pushing forward. I want to help more kids, more families. Maxwell smiled. That's the spirit. And we will. But we need to take action. We need to think outside the box. We can't rely on the traditional ways of fundraising. It's time for us to go big, partner with corporations, launch a nationwide campaign, and build a network of people who believe in our cause. I agree, Emily said, her voice firm. We'll reach out to the right people. We'll do whatever it takes. Maxwell stood up and looked out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. He had made promises, and now he had to deliver. For Emily, for Mary, for all the children they had yet to help. The road ahead would not be easy, but it would be worth it. He had already given everything he had to them, but now he knew that he had to give more. It was time to fight for them, for the future, and for the hope that had changed his life forever. Maxwell Reed had always prided himself on being in control. In the business world, control was everything. He had built his empire from the ground up, making deals, securing investments, and overseeing the vast network of Skytech enterprises. He was accustomed to the pace of high-stakes negotiations, the adrenaline of the deal, and the satisfaction of seeing his hard work come to fruition. But nothing in his life had prepared him for the unpredictable world of nonprofit work, where every day brought a new set of challenges, each one more difficult than the last. The Mary Reed Foundation was growing rapidly, and with its growth came an avalanche of responsibilities. Maxwell had spent the past several months pouring everything he had into making sure that the foundation was financially stable, that the children they were supporting received the best resources, and that their mission of providing hope, opportunity, and education reached as many young people as possible. But despite their success, the foundation was still facing obstacles, some of which Maxwell hadn't anticipated. The financial strain was becoming unbearable. The foundation had done well in securing initial donations, and the community outreach programs had been a success. But sustaining the programs long-term required more than just good intentions. The bills kept piling up, and with every new initiative they launched, they found themselves in need of more funding. Maxwell had worked tirelessly to secure grants, but even that seemed to be a never-ending battle. He had promised Emily that he would be there for her and her mother, and while his financial support was steadfast, he found himself questioning if it would be enough in the long run. Maxwell sat in his office one evening, the only light coming from his desk lamp as he looked over the financial reports for the foundation. The numbers didn't lie. Their expenses were growing faster than their income, and the reality of what that meant for the future was beginning to hit him hard. The foundation had made a significant impact on the community, but couldn't continue to grow if they didn't find a sustainable model. He sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples, trying to think of a solution. The tension in his chest was unbearable, and for the first time in months, he felt truly overwhelmed. He had faced corporate wars, ruthless competitors, and endless battles in the business world. But this was different. This was about people's lives. This was about children who had no other hope, no other path forward. It wasn't just about the money. It was about their future. Just then his phone buzzed, snapping him out his thoughts. It was a message from Emily. Mr. Reed, we need to talk. I think it's time to take the foundation in a new direction. I have some ideas I want to share. Maxwell's heart skipped a beat. He had come to rely on Emily's insights and vision for the foundation. She had grown into her leadership role with confidence, even though she was only a teenager. She had a level of determination that Maxwell had rarely seen in anyone, and despite the hardships they were facing, Emily had continued to believe in their cause. She had never wavered in her commitment to the foundation. Maxwell quickly typed a response, his fingers hesitating for just a moment before he hit send. Of course, Emily. Let's meet tomorrow. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. The next morning, Maxwell met Emily in his office. She was sitting at his desk, her posture more mature than her years, her eyes filled with purpose. Maxwell could see the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but there was a fire in her gaze that he admired. Despite everything that had happened, despite the challenges they had faced, she still believed in the mission. She still believed in the possibility of a better future. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," Emily said, her voice steady and confident as she stood up to greet him. "Good morning, Emily. You're up early. What's on your mind?" Maxwell asked, gesturing for her to sit down. Emily took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about the foundation. I know we made some great strides, but I think it's time to take a risk. We need to do something different, something bold that will secure the future of the foundation and make sure we can help even more kids. I know that sounds scary, but I think it's the only way forward." Maxwell leaned in, his interest piqued. "What do you have in mind?" "I've been looking at the big picture," Emily said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We've done well with the community programs, but we're still missing something. We need a more sustainable model, something that doesn't rely so heavily on donations. We need to create a program where we can bring in revenue while still helping kids. I've been thinking about a vocational training program." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "A vocational training program? What exactly do you mean?" "I mean, we need to give kids real-world skills. We've been focusing on education, but we also need to focus on giving them skills that will help them get jobs. Things like coding, graphic design, carpentry skills that are in demand and that can set them up for success long-term. If we can teach them these skills, they can start earning money, and we can start building a system where the kids are able to help themselves, not just rely on donations." Maxwell sat back in his chair, his mind whirling with the possibilities. It was bold. It was risky, but it was exactly the kind of idea they needed to move the foundation forward. He had always known that education was the key, but Emily's idea to pair education with practical skills was revolutionary. "That's a brilliant idea, Emily," Maxwell said, his voice filled with admiration. "If we can get the right partners and resources, this could change everything. It would give the kids not just hope, but the tools they need to succeed." Emily smiled, a sense of relief washing over her. "I knew you'd understand. But there's more to it. We need to find a way to scale it. We can't just limit it to one community. We need to reach kids all over the country, maybe even globally. We need to find a way to turn this into a global initiative." Maxwell's eyes widened. "A global initiative? That's ambitious, Emily." Emily nodded, her voice steady. "I know it is, but we've already made a difference here. Imagine what we could do if we could take this model and apply it to communities all over the world. We could create a network of vocational training centers, partnerships with corporations, and even online platforms to teach kids who don't have access to in-person training." Maxwell took a deep breath, considering her words carefully. He had always been a visionary, but Emily was pushing him to think even bigger. The idea of expanding the foundation globally was daunting, but if anyone could pull it off, it was Emily. "I'm in," Maxwell said, a sense of excitement building in his chest. "We'll make this happen, but we'll need to secure significant funding. We'll need to partner with some of the biggest companies, get corporate sponsors, and build a strong online presence. This will take a lot of resources." "I know," Emily said, her voice unwavering, "but we've already built a foundation that people believe in. Now, we just need to take it to the next level." The next several weeks were a whirlwind. Maxwell and Emily spent their time pitching the new vocational training initiative to potential investors and corporate partners. They met with tech companies, education organizations, and even government officials, explaining their vision and seeking the support they needed to make a reality. The reception was mixed. Some people were skeptical of the idea, questioning whether it was possible to scale such an initiative while still maintaining the personal touch that had made the foundation so successful. But Maxwell and Emily were relentless. They knew that they were on the right path, and they refused to let the doubts of others derail their mission. One particularly tense afternoon, after another failed pitch to a major donor, Maxwell sat in his office, feeling defeated. They had been at this for weeks, and progress seemed slow. Emily had been working tirelessly, pouring her heart into every meeting, every proposal. But even she was beginning to feel the strain. Just as Maxwell was about to give in to frustration, he received an unexpected call. It was from a corporate partner he had been in talks with for some time, a major tech company that had expressed interest in the vocational training initiative but had yet to commit. "Mr. Reed," the voice on the other end said, "we've been following the progress of your foundation, and we're impressed by the impact you've made. After reviewing your proposal for the vocational training program, we'd like to move forward with a partnership." Maxwell's heart raced as he listened. "Are you serious? This is a huge opportunity." "We are. We'll be providing the initial funding, as well as access to our resources. We'll also be helping you scale the program through our networks. This is just the beginning, Mr. Reed. We believe in what you're doing." Maxwell sat back in his chair, a sense of relief washing over him. The partnership would provide the foundation with the resources they needed to expand, and it was the first step toward turning Emily's vision into a global initiative. That night, Maxwell shared the news with Emily, who was overwhelmed with emotion. "We did it," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "We actually did it." Maxwell smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You did it, Emily. This is your vision, your determination, and it's happening because you believed in it." With the funding secured and the partnership in place, Maxwell and Emily set their sights on expanding the vocational training program. They began building the first training centers, hiring instructors, and developing an online curriculum that would reach students around the world. It was a monumental task, but they were more committed than ever. As they worked to bring their vision to life, Maxwell found himself reflecting on how much his life had changed since meeting Emily and Mary. He had once been consumed by success and ambition, but now he was driven by something more. He had found a new purpose, one that had nothing to do with money or power, and everything to do with helping others. And as he looked at the foundation he had helped build, he knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome, and critics to silence. But with Emily by his side, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The future, once uncertain, now seemed filled with endless possibilities. Maxwell Reed had always measured success in terms of tangible achievements, stock prices, new contracts, and the expansion of his empire. But as he sat in the warm glow of his office, staring out at the city below, he knew that his true success had nothing to do with any of those things. True success, he realized, was measured by the lives you touched, the people you helped, and the legacy you left behind. Maxwell's life had been irrevocably changed by Emily and her mother, Mary. Their courage, resilience, and determination had brought him to a new understanding of what it meant to live a meaningful life. It had been a long and difficult journey, one filled with uncertainty, setbacks, and triumphs. But through it all, Maxwell had found a purpose beyond the boardroom. He had found a cause that was greater than any business deal, a cause that was changing lives and creating a ripple effect of hope and opportunity. Now, as the foundation continued to grow, Maxwell could see the fruits of their labor. The vocational training centers were thriving, providing children in underserved communities with the skills they needed to succeed in the workforce. The scholarship programs were sending students to college who otherwise would have never had the chance. The mentorship programs were empowering young leaders to step into their potential, and the partnerships they had secured with major corporations had ensured the foundation's sustainability for years to come. But even with all the success, there was still a feeling of unfinished business, a desire to do more, to reach more people, to continue changing the world. And that, Maxwell realized, was the true beauty of the work they had started. There was always more to be done, more lives to be changed, more opportunities to be created. It was a crisp autumn morning when Maxwell and Emily stood in front of the new state-of-the-art training center, a ribbon-cutting ceremony scheduled to mark the beginning of a new chapter for the Mary Reed Foundation. The building, a symbol of everything they had worked for, stood tall and proud, its sleek glass walls reflecting the sunlight that bathed the city. This was their greatest achievement yet. As Maxwell and Emily walked toward the stage, a crowd of well-wishers, corporate partners, and community leaders had gathered to celebrate. The excitement in the air was palpable. The future of the foundation was brighter than ever, and Maxwell couldn't help but feel a swell of pride as he looked at Emily beside him. This was her moment. It was her vision, her hard work, her unwavering belief in the foundation that had gotten them here. Maxwell had been the guiding hand, But it was Emily who had been the driving force behind the foundation's success. And now, as the ribbon was about to be cut, he realized that he had played a small but important role in helping her dreams come true. Emily stood tall, her face glowing with pride as she spoke to the crowd. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice steady and filled with passion. "When my mom and I first started this journey, we had no idea where it would take us. But we knew one thing. There were kids out there who needed help. There were kids who didn't have the same opportunities that I had. And we couldn't stand by and let that happen. Together, we're going to change the world, one child at a time." Maxwell watched as the crowd erupted into applause, the sound of their cheers ringing in his ears. He had seen Emily grow from a scared, vulnerable young girl into a confident, compassionate leader who was inspiring others to follow in her footsteps. The foundation had become her life's work, and it was clear that she was just getting started. As the ribbon was cut, marking the official opening of the training center, Maxwell felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been long, and there had been times when he had doubted their ability to succeed. But now, looking at the center and the people they had helped, he knew it had all been worth it. They had done something real. They had made a lasting impact. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Maxwell and Emily found themselves alone on the rooftop of the new training center. The city lights stretched out before them, the hum of the traffic below serving as a reminder of the world they had just begun to change. Maxwell leaned against the railing, looking out at the skyline. "You did it, Emily," he said quietly. "You really did it." Emily joined him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "We did it, Mr. Reed. We've come so far, but I know we can do even more. We're not done yet." Maxwell chuckled softly. "I don't think we'll ever be done. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? There's always more work to be done. There's always someone else to help, another life to change." Emily smiled, her eyes bright with determination. "That's the plan. We'll keep going, no matter what." Maxwell turned to her, his expression serious but filled with warmth. "I'm proud of you, Emily. You've taught me more than I could have ever imagined. You've shown me what it means to fight for something you believe in, to give everything for a cause greater than yourself." Emily shook her head, a slight smile on her lips. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Reed. You've been with me every step of the way. You've supported me, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Maxwell's heart swelled with emotion. He had always been the one giving advice. But now, it was Emily who was teaching him what it meant to live a life of purpose. She had shown him that the true measure of success wasn't wealth, but the impact you had on others. And through Emily, he had learned that helping others didn't make you weaker, it made you stronger. "I'm glad I could help," Maxwell said softly. "And I'll always be here, Emily, for you, for the foundation, for everything you need." Emily smiled, her voice filled with gratitude. "I know you will. Your family, Mr. Reed. You're the family I never thought I'd have." Maxwell nodded, his eyes focused on the horizon. "And you, Emily, are the daughter I never had. I've watched you grow into someone who will change the world, and I have no doubt that you'll continue to do so." A few weeks later, as the foundation continued to flourish, Maxwell and Emily received a letter. It was from Mary. She had written it shortly before her passing, a fact that Maxwell had not been prepared for. She had been in and out of the hospital for several months, but she had insisted that she was fine, that she would be there to see the foundation grow. When Maxwell had first heard about Mary's passing, his heart had broken for Emily. She had lost so much in her young life, and he had feared that this loss would shatter her. But Emily, as always, had shown strength that far exceeded her years. The letter Mary had left behind was filled with love and gratitude. It was a final message to Emily, encouraging her to continue with the work they had started and to keep fighting for the children who needed her. Mary had spoken of her pride in Emily, in the woman she had become, and how she knew that Emily would carry on the legacy they had built together. Maxwell read the letter in silence, his heart aching for both Mary and Emily. He could feel Mary's presence in every word, and it reminded him of the profound impact that a mother's love could have, even in the face of death. Emily had always been the center of the foundation, but this letter made it clear that her mother's spirit would always guide her. Months passed, and the foundation continued to expand. The vocational training centers had spread to several other cities, and the online curriculum had reached thousands of children worldwide. The scholarship program had sent dozens of students to college, many of whom had returned to give back to their communities, continuing the cycle of hope and opportunity. Emily had taken the helm of the foundation with grace, leading it into a new era of growth and outreach. Maxwell, though no longer the CEO of Skytech, continued to be involved in every aspect of the foundation, offering guidance and support. His role had shifted from businessman to mentor, from leader to guide, but it was the most fulfilling work he had ever done. The Mary Read Foundation had become a beacon of hope, not just for the children it helped, but for everyone involved. It was a reminder that the future could be rewritten, that with determination, resilience, and a little bit of help from others, anything was possible. As Maxwell stood on the rooftop once again, looking out at the city, he realized that this was a life he had always been meant to live. He had found a purpose, a calling that went beyond wealth and power. And with Emily by his side, there was no limit to what they could accomplish. Years later, Maxwell watched from the sidelines as Emily took her place among the world's most influential leaders. She had fulfilled the promise she made to her mother, and more. The foundation had become a global movement, reaching children and families in every corner of the world. The legacy of Mary Read lived on in every life they touched, in every child who received a scholarship, in every young person who learned a skill and found hope. Maxwell had learned that the true measure of a life well lived wasn't the empire you built, but in the people you helped, the lives you changed, and the love you gave. He had walked a path that was unpredictable and full of challenges, but it had been the most rewarding journey of his life. As he stood on the stage one last time, watching Emily speak to a crowd of supporters, Maxwell felt a sense of peace settle over him. The world had been changed, and it was all because of the courage of a young girl who had never given up on the belief that a better future was possible. And that was the greatest legacy of all. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed the video, please give a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave a meaningful comment below. Let us know your thoughts, and tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is in your part of the world. It means a lot to us to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content like this. And to all our returning subscribers, thank you for your continued support. We couldn't do this without you. Stay tuned for more exciting videos coming your way, and we'll see you in the next one.